There ain't a soul around for miles except the howling wind that sounds exactly like a ghost train whistling through a lonely canyon. Driving that steel axe into the frozen wall takes every ounce of grit a climber can muster up from deep inside their bones. You have to keep your eyes peeled because the mountain likes to throw snow down like a dusty rug being shaken out hard. Setting up a tent on this ledge feels like trying to build a house of cards inside a tornado blowing across the plains. When the sun goes down, the darkness swallows everything whole and leaves you shivering like a wet dog in a winter storm. But seeing that golden sun rise over the jagged peaks makes a man believe in something mighty powerful watching over this wild land. It is a long and dusty road to glory, but we keep climbing because quitting is a word we just do not understand. The air gets thinner than watered down whiskey up here, making every single breath feel like a battle just to stay alive today. From this vantage point, the whole world looks spread out like a patchwork quilt stitched together by the hands of the good Lord. This mountain will test your mettle and chew you up if you do not respect the sheer power of this jagged stone giant. Even with a face made of smooth stone and no voice to scream, we feel the terror gripping tight around our frozen chest. We reckon there's no turning back now, so we might as well saddle up and ride this storm all the way up. The real fight is just beginning as we approach the steep walls that separate the boys from the true legends of the climb. Climbing this steep wall feels like trying to crawl up a greased glass pane while wearing a pair of heavy, muddy lead boots. When a rock comes tumbling down, you better duck fast because this savage mountain throws punches harder than an angry bronco in a chute. Hearing that thunder roll down the valley makes your blood run colder than a well-water bucket drawn up in deep mid-January. You tie that knot tight and check it twice because one slip up here means you are going to be meeting your maker early. Back in the old days, brave surveyors hauled heavy brass instruments up here just to measure exactly how tall this monster really stands. Trying to write down notes with frozen fingers is harder than trying to thread a needle while riding on a galloping wild stallion. They looked out at that horizon and named these peaks with simple numbers, but we know they hold a spirit wilder than fire. Walking across this endless river of ice feels like marching across the surface of the moon with only your shadow for company today. Staring at that blank wall of blue ice is a puzzle that could freeze a man's brain if he thinks about it too long. Carrying that heavy wooden frame on your back reminds you of the pioneers who blazed this trail with grit and pure, stubborn pride. You have to clap those hands together hard and keep that blood moving, or the frost will bite them off like a snapping turtle. Squeezing through this narrow rock chimney is tighter than a fat badger trying to wiggle his way out of a small chicken coop. The air is so thin, your head starts spinning like a top and you walk crooked like you had too much moonshine whiskey. Hanging onto this black pyramid of rock feels like clinging to the shingles of a steep roof in a howling midnight windstorm. Looking up at that massive block of ice hanging overhead is like standing directly under a guillotine blade waiting for it to drop. When the whiteout hits, you cannot tell the sky from the ground and you feel as lost as a cat in a blizzard. Resting here in the death zone feels like your body is slowly shutting down, just like an old truck running out of gas. Walking this knife-edge ridge requires nerves of steel because one wrong step sends you falling down into the great wide open forever. Standing on the very top of the world makes you feel like a king looking down at a kingdom of clouds and stone. But the glory is fleeting because now we have to turn around and face the long and dangerous road back down to earth. Coming down in the pitch black dark requires trust in that single beam of light guiding your boots to safety on the slick ice. You start hearing whispers in the wind and turning your head to see a friend who really ain't standing there on that ledge. Sliding down this rope in the moonlight feels like dangling by a thread over the deepest canyon you have ever seen in your life. We bow our heads low to pay steady respects to the fallen souls who stayed forever on this mountain chasing their wildest dreams. Dropping your knees on the rocky ground feels sweeter than a cold glass of lemonade after a long, hot day baling summer hay. Your hands shake like a leaf in a gale because the adrenaline has finally left the building and your nerves are completely fried. Looking back at that purple mountain majesty makes you wonder how something so beautiful could try so hard to kill you stone dead. Holding this piece of rusted iron reminds us that we walk in the footsteps of giants who paved this hard road before us. Walking away into the heavy fog feels like leaving a piece of your own soul behind among the ghosts of the high peaks. That mountain stands tall and silent under the stars, waiting patiently for the next fool brave enough to try and tame her wild heart. Breathing through this rubber mask sounds like a steam engine chugging along, but it is the only thing keeping you breathing up here. Crawling across a ladder over a bottomless pit will make a grown man pray harder than he ever has in Sunday morning church. Watching that blue flame melt snow into water takes forever when your throat is drier than dust in a West Texas windstorm. You have to shovel that heavy snow fast or it will bury your tent deeper than a badger hole in the hard ground. Staring at yourself in these gold lenses reminds you to protect your eyes or that white sun will burn them blind for sure. Sleeping while hanging off a cliff wall is about as comfortable as trying to take a nap on a prickly pear cactus patch. Seeing that rope start to unravel will make your heart skip a beat faster than a scared jackrabbit running from a hungry coyote. Hacking away at this blue ice to make a step takes more muscle than chopping endless cords of wood for the winter fire. Dragging this heavy sled through the snow feels like pulling a stubborn mule that just refuses to move an inch on the trail. Spinning on that long line high above the glacier is a wild ride that beats any roller coaster at the county fair today. Leaning into this screaming jet stream feels like trying to stand tall on the roof of a runaway freight train barreling down tracks. Seeing those three suns burning in the sky looks like a miracle painted by angels, just to remind us beauty exists up here. Hearing nothing but static hiss on the radio makes a man feel lonelier than a tumbleweed rolling across an empty Dust Bowl town. Staring at the ceiling of this shaking tent while the storm rages outside is enough to drive a sane man completely stark raving mad. When the ice coats your suit like armor, you feel like a statue frozen in time, waiting for the spring thaw to arrive. Looking down between your boots at that endless drop will make your stomach do flip-flops faster than a fish out of water. Standing under a blanket of stars, this bright makes you realize we are just tiny specks of dust in this big old universe. When panic sets in and you get tangled up, you have to calm your breathing or fear will wrap around you like a snake. Staring at a piece of broken steel in your hand is a harsh reminder that even the toughest metal can snap under pressure here. Watching the shadow of this mountain stretch across the clouds is like seeing the dark finger of a giant pointing across the whole world. Fighting with a frozen zipper is a frustration that will make you want to scream louder than a banshee in the dead of night. Seeing that needle hit 0 on the gauge hits you harder than a punch to the gut because air is more precious than gold. You have to dig that axe in hard to stop the slide or you will be riding a landslide all the way to hell. Hearing a familiar voice on the satellite phone sounds sweeter than a choir of angels singing hymns on a Sunday morning back home. Peeling those goggles off reveals that the sun has scorched your eyes, leaving you blind as a bat in the bright noon daylight. Touching solid rock after days of ice feels more comforting than shaking the hand of your best friend after a long time apart. That helicopter wind hits you like a hammer from the sky, kicking up dust and offering a ride home on a chariot of fire. Drinking a hot cup of soup down at base camp brings the life back into your frozen bones faster than anything else on earth. Seeing green grass and little flowers blooming feels like walking into the Garden of Eden after spending a lifetime in a frozen white purgatory. We turn around to take one last look at the beast and tip our hats with respect to the king of the savage mountains. Staring out this city window at the rain feels strange because I swear I can still see that ghost mountain staring right back. Just dropping a cube of ice into a glass of whiskey makes my hands shake like a leaf caught in a sudden updraft. I sit here watching the evening news, but all I can see is snow falling softly right here in the middle of the living room. Opening up the closet door reveals that old red suit hanging there like the ghost of a friend who never really made it home. The noise of this dinner party fades away until all I hear is the ringing silence of the high peaks screaming in my ears. Lying in this soft bed feels heavy because the blankets press down on my chest just like a crushing drift of heavy wet snow. These scarred fingertips resting on the polished wood table are a permanent reminder that the cold never truly leaves your bones once it enters. Looking up these wooden stairs at night turns them into a terrifying wall of ice that I have to climb just to reach sleep. I trace the lines on this old map until the paper wears thin, trying to figure out exactly how we survived that frozen hell. Sitting by the fire in these heavy boots feels right because a part of my soul is still walking on that jagged glacial ice. Looking in the mirror, I see a crack running down my face that nobody else can see, but I know it is surely there. This jagged black rock sitting on the glass table looks out of place, but it is the only thing here that feels truly real. Standing on this rooftop with the wind hitting my face is the only way I can feel alive in this city of concrete and steel. Seeing my old gear behind glass feels like looking at a stranger who died a long time ago on the side of that mountain. If they took a picture of my chest today, they would see a heart made of solid blue ice instead of flesh and blood. Every word I try to write down turns into frost on the page because the story is too cold for simple ink to hold. Riding this subway train feels lonely because I am still wearing the armor of a warrior while everyone else is just living normal lives. One eye sees the green grass of the park while the other eye is still blinded by the whiteout of a raging winter storm. Unzipping this chest reveals that we are not empty inside but filled with the endless starry void of the great wide universe up above. The journey finally ends as we turn our backs on the world and walk slowly into the white mist where all legends eventually fade. Standing frozen in the deep blue ice makes a man feel like an ancient statue waiting for the history books to be written today. Seeing that single white feather float away on the breeze reminds us that our protection is fragile as a whisper in a storm. The sun spins around us like a golden coin on a table while the mountain stands still and watches the days fly by fast. That red rope is pulled tighter than a fiddle string ready to snap and send us tumbling down into the deep dark unknown below. All our gear starts floating around in the darkness like we have left the earth behind and drifted out into the deep cold stars. There is a fire burning deep inside this block of ice that refuses to go out no matter how cold the wind blows tonight. You can see fresh footprints marching through the snow, but there ain't a living soul walking in them as they head toward the summit. Looking into that black glass shows the whole world turned upside down where the sky is the ground and gravity has lost its grip. That red smoke billows out against the white snow like a warning signal screaming that danger is right around the corner for us all. We lay the memory down gently on the table and turn out the lights because some stories are just too heavy to carry forever. Looking back through the dusty lens of history shows us that the brave pioneers of old had grit tougher than rawhide leather boots. Staring through the green glow of the night feels like watching a ghost story unfold in the pitch black heart of the darkness. When the mountain rises up like a giant titan of stone, it makes you realize we are just crawling on its massive shoulders. Drifting deep beneath the surface of this frozen lake feels like sinking into a cold dream where the only sound is your breath. Stripping it all down to the bare blue bones reveals the complex digital soul of a plan that might just keep us alive. Seeing your face broken into 1,000 sharp pieces on the snow reminds you that this mountain will shatter your pride like glass. Glowing warm and soft in the dark cave reminds us that even the coldest stone can hold a little fire deep inside it. Walking high above the clouds makes a man feel light as a feather floating in a purple dream where gravity cannot hold him. A tiny fragile wing landing on this cold white face is a whisper of life in a place where nothing is supposed to grow. Standing the test of time turns a simple climber into a golden legend that will shine bright long after the snow has melted. Being trapped inside this golden stone feels like waiting for 1,000,000 years to pass while the world keeps spinning around outside. When flowers start blooming on your chest, you know that the mountain is trying to turn you back into the dust of the earth. The lines on your face tell the story of every ridge and valley, just like a map drawn by the hand of God. Being made of liquid metal means you reflect every jagged peak and storm cloud until you become one with the savage frozen land. The world flips upside down and suddenly you are falling up into the dark sky like a stone thrown by a giant hand. Time slips away like dry sand pouring through your fingers, reminding you that every second up here is a precious gift from above. Locked inside this block of clear ice, you can scream all you want, but the silence outside is heavier than a heavy tombstone. Standing here made of black rock and fire shows that even in the coldest winter there is a heat that refuses to die. Floating way up high like a lonely moon makes the treacherous mountain below look peaceful as a sleeping baby in a quiet cradle. With just one click of a button, the whole struggle vanishes into thin air like it was never really there at all today. We draw up these blue lines on paper thinking we can map out a wild beast that refuses to ever be tamed. Looking through this heat-seeking lens shows the only fire burning is the stubborn will beating deep inside a frozen chest. Sometimes it feels like we are just tiny toys trapped inside a glass ball waiting for a giant hand to shake us. The darkness swirls around us like thick black ink and water until you cannot tell which way is up or where to breathe. These old tapes are worn out and fuzzy like a memory that has been played back one too many times in your head. If you stand still long enough, the mountain will claim you back and turn you into a wild garden of moss and stone. The shadow on the wall tells the honest truth that underneath all this fancy gear, we are just bones waiting to finally rest. Staring into this polished mirror shows the whole world watching us perform on a stage built of slippery ice and cold, hard steel. Our story is written in the stars, connecting the dots across the night sky like a legend that will never, ever truly die. We pack away the memories in a cardboard box and tape it shut because some adventures are just too heavy to keep carrying. There's a strange light glowing inside this shell, like a neon sign buzzing late at night in a lonely, dusty roadside diner. We are woven together tighter than a carbon fiber weave built to withstand the crushing weight of the whole wide world on us. Up here you feel fragile as a cheap rubber balloon floating through a sharp cactus patch just waiting for the pop to come. The wind carves us down slowly like an old sandstone canyon until all the rough edges are smoothed away by the passing years. The mountain pulls on us like a powerful magnet, dragging black iron filings across a sheet of white paper in a science class. We disappear in a puff of white dust like a ghost vanishing into the fog, leaving nothing behind but a faint white memory. Looking through this sharp diamond prism breaks the world into 1,000 rainbows that dance and sparkle in the cold, clear morning sunlight. Life finds a way to bloom in the dark like strange glowing mushrooms growing in the cellar of an old abandoned farmhouse. The signal is breaking up into loud, white noise, static like an old television set trying to catch a station in a storm. It feels like walking down a long hall of mirrors, where the same face stares back at you forever in an endless line. We take it all apart piece by piece to see what makes a man tick when the pressure is really bearing down hard. You feel as fragile as a folded piece of paper standing tall in a wind that wants to tear you into tiny shreds. The heat of the struggle melts your resolve like hot wax dripping down the side of a candle, burning at both ends tonight. Life is as delicate as a soap bubble floating on the breeze, reflecting a world that could pop it in a split second. We grow old and rusty like a heap of scrap metal left out in the rain to weather the storms of time alone. We are just a collection of broken pieces glued back together, trying to make a pretty picture out of a hard, jagged life. It feels like climbing a staircase that never ends, going round and round in circles until you do not know up from down. Sometimes you want to disappear into the background and let the mountain swallow you up so nobody can see you struggle or fall. When you step back far enough, this whole big, scary adventure looks like nothing more than a toy sitting on a dusty table. The machine starts up again and churns out another dreamer ready to face the cold with a heart full of brand new hope. There's a whole quiet world living inside our heads, even when the storm outside is raging loud enough to wake the dead. Fate pulls us along by a thin red string, dragging us toward a destiny we cannot escape, no matter how hard we dig. The cracks in our armor are just the places where the light shines through to show the world the fire burning deep inside. The sky swirls around like thick, wet paint on a canvas, creating a picture of wild beauty that no artist could ever capture. Every direction you look, you see 1,000 versions of yourself struggling to find the right path through this endless hall of mirrors. We are wired into the mountain like a glowing circuit board pulsating with the electric energy of 1,000 storms rolling in tonight. The storm is not just outside on the peak, because the thunder and lightning are rolling right here inside our own restless minds. Trying to stay soft in a hard world is a tough job when the ice wants to turn you into stone-cold granite. Sometimes the darkness grabs hold of your boots and drags you down into the deep black pit like thick, sticky tar on a road. Life moves faster than a greased lightning bolt streaking across the sky, leaving us wondering where all the precious time has gone today. The whole world breaks down into a stream of green numbers raining down like a digital storm in the dead of the night. We are just lumps of gray clay being molded by the rough hands of fate into something stronger than we were yesterday morning. We are nothing but a cloud of glowing dots floating in the dark, waiting for a signal to tell us we are real. The world spins around in a crazy pattern of shapes and colors until you get so dizzy you cannot stand up straight anymore. Our story is being drawn in pencil on a rough sheet of paper, and every mistake gets erased by the wind and snow. Standing out in the weather turns us green and weathered like an old copper statue watching over a forgotten town square back home. Sometimes what is missing defines us more than what is there, just like a hole cut out of a solid white sheetrock wall. You start seeing double when the air gets thin and the ghosts of the mountain split apart into red and blue blurry shadows. We build our lives one block at a time, stacking them up high until the wind comes along and knocks them all down. It feels like we are pressed up against a cold glass window looking in at a life we're trying so hard to reach. The pressure wraps around you tight like clear plastic sealing in the freshness of a prime cut sitting in the butcher's shop window. We feel like giants sleeping on the land while tiny little doubts crawl all over us like ants looking for a picnic crumb. Staring at the snow is like looking at an ink blot test where every shadow turns into a demon from your own dark past. Our nerves are stretched tighter than a black thread woven frantically between 1,000 nails hammered into a hard piece of oak board. We drift through the darkness like strange, glowing creatures in the deep ocean, waiting for the current to take us somewhere new today. The time ticks away inside our chests like rusty brass gears grinding together in a grandfather clock that has forgotten how to chime. The heaviness clings to us like thick black oil bubbling up from the ground and refusing to let go of our tired boots. We are just lonely wanderers holding a lantern up high, trying to find a path through the darkness of this cold fortune card. Memories shatter into a million shiny pieces like a broken mirror spinning around in a dusty dance hall long after the music stops. We examine our past through a magnifying glass, trying to find the one moment where everything changed on this long and dusty road. Sometimes the mountain hides its face behind a heavy curtain of clouds, like a secret present that nobody is allowed to open yet. We stand still waiting for the impact like a dummy in a test car, knowing full well the crash is coming for us. We are made of colored sand that the wind blows away, leaving nothing behind but the empty rock where we once stood proud. Our signal starts to flicker and fade like a blue hologram losing its power connection in the middle of a bad storm tonight. The heat of the struggle melts our resolve like soft wax dripping down the side of a candle, burning too hot and fast. Deep inside this frozen shell, there is a wild jungle growing green and lush where the cold wind can never ever reach it. The pressure builds up until we shatter into a million sharp fragments, exploding outward like a stick of dynamite with a short fuse. We sink slowly into the white snow until we disappear completely, like a drop of milk falling into a bucket of fresh cream. They leave our empty suits standing in glass cases like monuments to the brave souls who left their hearts up on the peak. The shell cracks open to reveal a blinding light, because every ending is just the start of another long ride on this wheel. The future looks bright and neon, but the mountain is still just as cold and deadly as it was in the old days. Climbing this rock feels like walking on the moon, where the air is gone and the silence is louder than a thunderclap. The pressure down here is heavy enough to crush a submarine, but we keep walking across the ocean floor step by slow step. We turn into wild animals covered in fur and growling at the wind because civilization is a memory we left far behind us. This place is a desolate wasteland where we patch up our broken gear with duct tape and prayers just to keep on moving. We wear our courage like shining armor and wield our ice axes like swords fighting a dragon made of solid blue glacial ice. The air up here is poison to our lungs, so we hide inside these yellow suits hoping the sickness does not get in. It feels absurd to be standing here in a suit and tie trying to do business with a mountain that does not care. We are prisoners of our own ambition, dragging a heavy ball and chain up a slope that refuses to let us go free. The mask finally cracks open and a terrified human eye looks out frantically, realizing there's a real person trapped inside this shell. The mouth stretches tight, trying to scream, but the plastic holds it back like a dam holding back a raging river floodwater. You can see the blood pumping hard under that white shell, beating fast like a frightened bird trapped inside a small wooden cage. A crack opens up and red blood starts spilling out, staining the white snow like red wine spilled on a Sunday dinner tablecloth. Seeing that warm breath puff out in the cold air proves there's a living soul hiding deep inside this cold, hard statue. Looking through the skin reveals a skull screaming in the dark, reminding us that death is always riding shotgun on this long trip. Panic sets in and hands start clawing at the face, trying hard to tear off the mask to find the real man underneath. We are just puppets dancing on invisible strings, pulled by a giant hand in the sky that does not care if we fall. The mirror shows a tired human face staring back, but the world still sees a blank white mask with no name or soul. The old skin cracks open and sheds away to reveal a heart of darkness that has been growing deep inside us all along. We try to patch up the cracks with gray tape because facing the truth is harder than facing the cold, howling wind outside. The mountain starts to lose its shape, turning into sharp, jagged blocks like a bad dream that is slowly falling apart at the seams. The colors go all wrong, and the suit turns into a checkerboard pattern because the world is forgetting how to look real today. We get stuck in the rock like a ghost, trapped between two worlds, vibrating and shaking, but unable to move an inch forward. We leave a trail of ghosts behind us because time is skipping like a scratched record, playing the same sad song over again. Suddenly we freeze up stiff, with arms out wide, floating above the snow like a scarecrow waiting for the crows to come home. The sky tears open to show a seam where the clouds are stitched together by a machine that is running out of steam. A red light starts flashing over our heads, warning us that our luck is running low and the game's almost over now. We reach out to grab hold of something solid, but find only a big red error message floating in the empty, thin air. The snow melts away to reveal a cold gray grid floor, showing us that this wild wilderness was built by a cold machine. The head cracks open and spills out wires and sparks instead of blood, proving we were just a rusted machine the whole time. The lights go out and the writing on the wall says the system is resetting to bring the nightmare back to life again. We stand in the white void, picking out a new suit like a cowboy picking a fresh horse for the next long ride. The skin is peeled back flat like a map on a table, showing every scar and scratch we collected on the way up. The counter clicks over and we wake up at the bottom of the mountain, ready to start the whole wild ride all over. Deep in the heart of a frozen wilderness stands a jagged mountain that calls out loudly to every brave soul looking for a fight. Here stands our silent traveler, made of smooth ivory and determination, ready to face the wrath of the savage king of all peaks. We strap on this heavy gear and tighten every buckle because Mother Nature does not show mercy to folks who come here unprepared. Looking up at that towering wall of ice makes a man feel smaller than a tick on a big fat sleeping dog. One foot in front of the other is the only honest way to conquer a beast that stands this tall against the blue sky. The cold wind bites harder than a rattlesnake in a bad mood, but our spirit burns hotter than a midsummer Texas barbecue fire. Every step on this slick ice requires a steady hand and a heart full of courage to keep from sliding down to nothing.